Let's move on to this story then. African Americans have been receiving backlash over their Zulu parade. Zulu Social Aid and Pleasure Club in New Orleans are accused of cultural appropriation and blackface. Now, there are arguments that the festival has existed since 1909, when Black Americans could not attend Mardi Gras. Joining us is Dr. Sipho Sithole, a World Languages and Cultures lecturer at Howard University. Dr. Sithole, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us as well, out of Washington, D.C., so very important as well. Just let's talk about the history of this parade, if you will. I want our audience to have a full understanding where possible.
No, thank you very much, Arabil. And I'm glad that you started exactly where I wanted to start, that this dates back as far as 1909, when African Americans were excluded. It was in what was then another parade, which was exclusively for white people. And that is then when they started to have their own parade, really just to show that they could identify themselves as a unit, as a community. But I also want to mention that one really cannot take this at a peripheral level. You have to look at the historical context, because if you are not sensitive to the history of enslavement and the displacement and the stripping of identity and cultural identity of the Africans who were then brought here as slaves during the Atlantic slave trade, you look at this as if the African Americans are just being disrespectful to the culture of the Zulu people. So we are talking about a community that still is seeking to identify themselves, to find who they are, to identify a culture and a community. So to them, identifying themselves with Zulu, just as a concept itself, is a cultural symbol to them. Because first of all, if you were to ask them, where do you come from? They would never tell you where they come from. I mean, of course, we know that there wasn't really slavery that came, enslavement that came from the region of South Africa as such to come to the US. So one has to be sensitive and just give them that respect and that recognition that they are trying to find a symbol that they can identify themselves with.
Is it not then up to, Dr. Sithole, apologies there for interrupting, but then is it not up to both sides? And I say both sides because in South Africa, there may need to be a sense of educating South Africans to understand why this happens all the way in New Orleans, while on the other side, also then educating those that are participating in this festival that as times change, the way they do things perhaps also needs to change to be in line with the definitions of what it is that they're trying to bestow, so that cultures are not misconstrued. Because, of course, very many people, including, of course, as yourself, Zulus, are indeed very territorial about their culture.
Well, you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, just coincidentally, last year I made a call to this office in New Orleans because I wanted to reach out to them. I had gone to a festival, a jazz festival in Washington, D.C., and there was a lady who kept standing up and dancing. She had a yellow umbrella written Zulu on it. And I went to talk to her after the show, and she told me that she's a member of the Zulu Social Aid in New Orleans. And I said, we need to talk because I think there could be some collaboration and also some awareness about what you are doing and also what we are also doing in South Africa. And unfortunately, the call went unanswered for the whole week. So getting back to the point that we are raising, yes, I honestly do think that there has to be that. Because if we were to ask a fundamental question, so what? So what do we want them to do? Do we want them to stop this parade? Do we want them to stop using the Zulu name? To achieve what? Because, you know, former Premier of KZN, Sipho Sithole, used to say, Zulu is the second biggest brand after Coca-Cola. And that is exactly what this means. And the other thing that I also wanted to mention is that New Orleans itself was just before the Civil War in the United States. It was the biggest slave trade in the whole of America. And to the extent that they were parading and buying 135,000 slaves at that time. Now, this time, they are not being paraded by the slave masters. They are pirating themselves to say, guess what? We are still here. You thought we would become extinct, and we are still here, and we are the Zulus, in whatever way that they understand themselves being Zulu. And it's also interesting that in 1909, when this Zulu Social Aid was being formed, was the same year that King Dinizulu, umamonga wosuthu, ozalo ucetshwayo isilo ucetshwayo umakwaze yengethole, was being banished to St. Helena. The very same year. So you might ask yourself, maybe they were aware what was happening in that part of Africa, and they wanted to identify with the struggle for the
Bob Sithole, it's going to be very hard, though, unfortunately. And as you can, I don't know if you could see, but while we were on air there, we were showing just some of the dissidence and the anger as well that was shown then by a lot of South Africans. And it is just social media, but one would imagine that there's still a whole host of people who are not happy with how it is being done. So where is the problem exactly, do you think? Should we then be educating ourselves? Or should this festival itself also be a lot more aligned to understanding why people are angry at how it is putting itself forward?
It's both ways. And I want to re-emphasize my earlier point that we have to be sensitive to the history of enslavement. We are talking about people who were completely stripped of their identity, language, and culture. And they are trying to find themselves, and they've been trying to find themselves for the longest time, and they're still in the process of discovery. So we need to say, firstly, we appreciate what we are doing. Can we now make sure that we can do in such a way that it is completely aligned, maybe not 100%, but aligned with what the Zulus are? And that would mean that both parties, and I don't know who would then be the trying to reach out to them, and them reaching out to us. And my call, I can't talk about it now. It was very specific to what I was trying to propose, which I'm still going to do because I don't want to talk about it on air. But I think maybe we are exaggerating the anger. We are really exaggerating in this instance, because the question again is, what do we want them to do? Must they stop? Must they forget about this symbol? This is the symbol of pride. Remember, we are a very proud nation, just us as Zulu people. And by the way, there's a number of Zulu, universal Zulu nations around the world, if you are not aware. Even hip-hop with Africa Bambata started the universal Zulu nation. You find them in New Orleans, you find them in Brazil, you find them in Europe, in Mexico, even in Cape Town, by the way, there is the universal Zulu nation, which is a hip-hop movement. So this is you can't ignore this brand, and people are using it because they understand what it stands for. It stands for black pride.
Maybe a lot more involvement, perhaps, I don't know, from the Zulu kingdom itself here in South Africa in that, or perhaps a few more Zulus being part of that festival in itself may be very beneficial. Maybe also just having, I don't know, maybe a clinic or some sort of understanding, some sort of communication about what it's meant to mean. Along with that festival is going to be very important for future generations to also understand the point here and for a help in that understanding of where they come from. Dr. Sipho Sithole, really appreciate your time this morning. An important conversation, I feel, and one we hope we certainly get a hold of a little bit later. Out of Washington, D.C., thank you so much for your time, is the World Languages and Cultural Lecturer at Columbia University, Dr. Sipho Sithole.